trains, or half the trains at St. Clair West, and you can still get a seat during rush hour north of St. Clair West on the Spadina line in the peak direction. Now, Shepherd has been an interesting example because there has been quite a bit of development go up along Shepherd. If you go along there, you see lots of cranes. But they've achieved a miracle there. They have put development along a subway line and not made it subway related. In fact, the relative ridership on Shepherd is going down with all that development. It's not going up. So if you compare, for example, and you need to do this, not look at absolute numbers, but look at relative numbers. If you compare the ridership on the Shepherd line with the ridership on the Young University and Bloor Danforth lines in 2007-2008, it was 4%. This last year, it's down to 3.9%. I mean, it's only a small change, but it's in the wrong direction. If you had expected to be a lot of development producing passengers on that Shepherd line, that percentage would be going up.
Is it because it's big box? Or?
Well, it's partly big box, but if you go along and look at the apartments along there, they are wholly car-orientated. 95% of them are car-orientated. It's as if the subway is not there. And I'm going to give you an example of that in just a minute. And the example actually comes from my favorite total waste of money, which is the Spadina extension. And I'm not going to go into all of these things because every one of them has a dismal story. Every one of these stations has a dismal story. Whether it's Downsview, Shepherd West. I mean, the only one that doesn't have a dismal story is the actual York University one, where there are enough passengers to justify. But let's go. I don't have time to do more, but let's just go to one of them, which is the last one at the end of the line, the Vaughan Corporate Centre. Now, this is a page today from the City of Vaughan's website about the Vaughan Corporate Centre. And you will see the only little bit that it has about its just here, which, if this works, yes, okay. I'm just highlighting that paragraph, okay, that you saw earlier. What it says about transportation. And it says, and it is an urban gateway to the city of Vaughan, easily accessible from two major highway systems, provide direct travel corridors west to Pearson Airport and south to downtown Toronto. There is no mention of the freaking subway. They are building that thing as though the subway does not exist. And the idea of subway-related development has not even begun to enter the thinking of what's going on there. It is absolutely astonishing. Yeah.
Richard, if you King and Bay as the center, what would 1,500 acres comprise?
I don't know, but I'll come back to that kind of analysis in a minute. Okay? So, and I could do, it's actually worse in Vaughan, but I could come down all these stations, the one actually just south of this, which is called Highway 407, if you can believe it as a name for a subway station, is actually worse, because at least there is development going on at Vaughan Corporate Centre. It's not even remotely related to the subway, but there is nothing going on at the Highway 407 station. And then you can come down to Steeles, where there's a couple of box stores. Then you have York University, which is fine. That one is the only one that makes any sense. And you come down to Finch and Keele, and there's nothing. There's some oil tanks there, which have been talking about getting rid of for years. And then there's basically a field with no development plan on the northwest, and another one on the southwest corner. And at Downsview, where I happened to be the other day, Downsview Station is just in the middle of nothing, absolutely nothing. So, how do I get back to? Okay, so these are Metrolinx's estimates of residents or jobs. Forget the fact that they're not related to the subway, just that they're there, at 3 of those stations. They've only analyzed 3 of those stations on that Spadina extension. And they used 800-meter radius from the station, and that is actually beyond what the conventional wisdom is about whether you will walk to a subway station, because it's normally considered 600 meters as the absolute limit. So I have knocked off a quarter of their numbers to bring it down to 600 meters. Actually, it's half the area is in that outer band from 600 to 800, but I've knocked off a quarter. Try and make it fair. So 15,000 residents or jobs in that kilometre square, which is what a 600-metre radius gives you, at Vaughan, and at Steeles West 1,200, and at Finch West 1,200. But what you need to make a subway work is 40,000. And so it is, and that's 2031, that's what they're projecting for 2031. I mean, it is so disconnected, it is so not right in terms of how these things should be being planned. The people who are managing our city and our region do not have an idea of how to get public transit to work. Just to give you an indication, if you come to one that I happen to remember, Osgood Station, what are the number of jobs and so on, and people living within 600 meters of Osgood Station? It is about 180,000. Okay, so we're not, when I'm talking about 40,000, we're not talking about downtown. I'm talking about 40,000 is, although it's not a Spadina station, it is King and Spadina. If you know King and Spadina, about 5 years ago, it's actually got more now. Average building height about 9 stories, quite a bit of park and other stuff. That's 40,000. It's very important to think, at least, even if you don't want to achieve it, you don't like the consequences, to think about making transit pay its own way. I wrote an article for the Star in 2006 said building subways without subsidies, and I used the Downsview extension as the Spadina extension, and I said, you know, all you have to do is to put 40,000 people or jobs at each station, and it will pay for itself. That's the arithmetic. And there's one station that already has that, which is York, because you count students as employees, and then you just got to work on the others. Now, the real model here is Hong Kong. I've done a lot of work in Hong Kong. I've done a little work for MTR, which is it's the private company that runs the subway in Hong Kong and the regional trains. But it is, the biggest shareholder is the government, but it's a minority share. So it's an odd relationship, if you can. It's on the stock exchange. It's a private company, but the government has a lot of clout in it. And they run at a profit. And how they run at a profit is that they get deeply into development issues. Not because they want to make money out of development. They actually make about 9% of their gross revenues out of development. 9%. They make 91%, well, not quite 91% because they got concessions in the stations and stuff, but they make 85% out of fares. And the reason they're deep in development is to make sure they have customers. Enough customers to pay the fares to justify the extensions which they're always putting in. And they don't put in an extension until they are reasonably confident that by the time it opens, because it takes somewhere between 6 and 10 years to get these things built, by the time it opens, there will be the people there, if they're not already there.
Richard, you're scaring us a bit with that.
Yeah, Hong Kong is pretty dense, but
but you've taken the very densest part of Hong Kong.
Yes,
photograph.
yes, I know. It's an iconic image.
Yeah,
it's
it
an
doesn't
iconic
have to be
image.
that dense.
I could show you other. You're right. I should show another image of Hong Kong.
You'll never.
I was.
You're a politician. You should know that.
I know. I didn't think, but I was giving a talk in Hong Kong a couple of years ago, and I was saying, I was praising the transit system in Hong Kong. 80% of motorized journeys are made by public transit, 10% by cabs, 10% by car. And I was telling them, just in case they didn't know, how efficient it was and cheap it was for them to have this enormous facility. And it's not all subways, the buses are, the bus system is even more miraculous. It's just I'm talking about subways at the moment. The bus system, they run these massive double-decker buses that are twice the size of the London double-decker buses, carrying 140 people each, and with TVs and stuff. I mean, it's amazing. Anyway, I said to them, in Toronto, unless a business person is operating entirely in the downtown, they're very lucky if they can fit in more than 2 meetings a day, because there's so much traveling that has to be done around. And you probably don't understand this. I mean, in Hong Kong, I said, it's easy to fit in, 5 or 6 meetings a day. And something really unusual happened. I was heckled. It doesn't happen in Hong Kong, but I was heckled, and somebody at the back said, 5 or 6, 11! I think that is a measure of productivity. But the other thing is, I did an analysis for, I forget which year now, of how much the average household was spending moving around in Hong Kong, which is about 50% larger than the city of Toronto. It's about 1,100 square kilometers in total. How much the average household was spending in Toronto and in Hong Kong. And in Toronto it was just under $3,000, and in Hong Kong it was just under $1,000 per household per year, moving around. I think that was, I forget the year that I did that for. So, what do we do to get development up? And if you go, I'm going to start at the west of the proposed Eglinton line, the one I proposed, okay? I mean, it's also the one that Metrolinx and Toronto had proposed, but they're proposing it as the last tunneled station for the LRT. I'm proposing it as the last subway station, west. So these are all Google Maps, and you look down at Eglinton and Keele. My God, isn't that ripe for redevelopment? Could you? I mean, you can just see it. There's nothing there, and yet they're going to put a subway there, and there are no plans for redeveloping that. Just no plans that I could discern. And I go east to Caledonia. Leicester's just more single-family homes, and you might say, well, people are going to be displaced. Well, yes, they're going to be displaced, but treat them generously. I mean, there's a lot of money at stake here. Give people 50% more than the market value. Don't nickel and dime them on the expropriation. It's pretty easy, if you don't nickel and dime people, to get them to move. And then you might say, well, what about the people who are just outside the area that you want to expropriate? Well, their values are going to go up as well. This is what happens. I mean, they're not going to benefit as much from the ones who get expropriated, perhaps, but you make it good for people. So we're going to Dufferin there, major intersection. Dufferin is a major road, Eglinton is a major road. There's nothing there. There's absolutely nothing there that would support even an LRT, let alone a subway.
Well, there are actually a few.
Down here. There's one building here. Yeah. I shouldn't say nothing. I don't know.
But on the other hand, there are car dealerships and things like
yes.
that.
And this strip north of Eglinton is just absurd. I'm exaggerating by saying there's nothing at that particular one, but there really is nothing at Oakwood. And that's what I should have kept that for. And if you look along Oakwood, That's looking south on Oakwood. That's looking east on Eglinton. Oakwood tees into Eglinton there, and that's looking west. And I mean, this is. I mean, you might respond to me and say, well, that's what a lot of the stations along Bloor Street look like, and I would say, yes, you know, and they've been there since the 60s, and this is Toronto's problem. It hasn't figured it out yet. And then you come to, this is the last one I'm going to come to, but the Eglinton West Station. I mean, this is where there already is a subway station, and there really is nothing there.